This is football, right? This is what we all want to see. This is two blue bloods going against each other. This is the best of the best when it comes to football, as far as top 10 teams, teams that people think are good, teams that are predicted to be in the playoffs. And this is the kind of football you want to see. We're just lucky to get to see this football in week 2. Obviously, being a Texas girl, I have a lot of things that I want to say about this. But at the end of the day, all I want is a win. If my team walks out of there and they win, great. Obviously, health is important too. So I want to win. And I have a couple of things that I've been thinking about. And I think a couple of things that makes this Texas team good this year, and a couple of things that have made people pick Texas as to why I think Texas is going to do some things that they should do. But we'll see what happens. So let's just get into the video. As I'm sitting here, I'm like looking, and this is really random. How do you like? This is super random, and I'm sorry that I'm going to add this here, but I just have to. Have you all ever gotten like new towels, and then you get a new towel, and then you take a shower, and then you and then you dry yourself, and then the new towel lint is on you? I am looking at the camera, and I can honestly see some of the lint on me, and I can't stop laughing. So sorry, this is super random, but I needed to add it because I just looked up and saw a piece of lint. So let me get that lint, and then let me get back to the video. To get started, HookEm. It is Texas-Michigan week. If you love college football, you will love this blue blood matchup. This is what football is all about. Texas traveling to Michigan to play the former national champion. So it is Texas. It is time for Texas to prove who they are. I've been saying this all along. It's time for them to put up or shut up. And I like this matchup. Just want to say a couple of things, because I think that there will be some talking points that are talked about more than anything. So first and foremost, Texas traveling to Texas traveling to Michigan doesn't concern me for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons why it doesn't concern me is because Texas had to travel to Alabama last year. There's about 40 people or so that are still with the Texas team that traveled last year with them to Alabama. So they get what time it is. They know what's happening. Also, last year, Texas on the road was a really good road team. I mean, obviously, we only lost 2 games. So it doesn't really concern me them going to Michigan. The other thing that doesn't concern me is I believe Texas is returning like 15 out of 22 starters. And those starters are going to be the people who make us go. For example, our quarterback, our offensive line, our linebackers, our secondary. So a lot of the people that we have returning are reasons why I'm not concerned about being away from home. I think it's good for us to be away from home. I am glad that we're away from home. And the other thing that I'm thinking about when I think about this Texas team, I actually think that we are the Michigan of last year. And why I say that is because we're older. We have a lot of guys that have been within the program. They've been with us for a while. And so now they are now getting to play, and this is their time to shine. And so I'm really looking forward to them playing this week. And you know me, if you know anything about me, you know how I feel. I don't care who you have, what your stars are, what you do, whatever. All I care about is that you line it up when you're on the field and that you prove it to me and that you win this game. And so these are the 3 things that I am going to be focused on this week. And I am going to stay calm, and I'm going to see how they work out. The first thing I think should surprise absolutely nobody is I'm going to be looking at the trenches. I think the area where Michigan is most strong is their defensive line, and our offensive line is supposed to be top 5 in college football. And so I'm going to be paying attention to that matchup. And I think whoever is able to win the trenches game should win this game, which isn't really like this novel take because obviously it's football, but I'm very interested to see how this Texas O-line holds up, because obviously we're in the SEC. So I'm also curious to see how this catapults us into the season. The other thing I'm very interested in seeing is how Texas's defensive line matches up against Michigan's offensive line, because Michigan's offensive line is young. I also want to point out that I don't care what Michigan did last week. I don't care how Michigan looked last week. I am focused on this week, and I'm focused on us getting the job done. So whatever Michigan did last week, I don't care. I want to see our D-line go against their offensive line, because I expect our D-line to be better than Michigan's offensive line, and that is just where I'm standing. The second thing that should come as no surprise to you is I am very interested to see how we're able to run the ball against Michigan. Obviously, the first thing I said was obviously defensive line being their strength. And so if we are not able to run the ball against Michigan, it's going to get interesting. I think last week they held Fresno State to 7 yards or whatever. We are not Fresno State. Our offensive line is obviously better than Fresno State. Everything we have is better than Fresno State. So I'm not concerned about that. I just expect us to be able to run the ball. Now, I'm not saying we're going to go out there and have a 150-yard rusher, 200-yard rusher. That's not what I'm saying. But I expect us to run the ball enough where Michigan has to respect the run. And so that is something that I'm looking for. My thing number 2 is how we're able to run the ball. The third thing I'm going to be looking for, and I think is kind of like a key to how this game is going to play out, is our depth. As I mentioned at the top of this, Texas is an older team. We're more experienced. We have a lot of guys that have played with us for a long time. As you will see by this thumbnail, I have a linebacker that usually nobody really talks about that is playing for Texas. And I believe our depth and our experience should carry us in this game. I think that we have that as our advantage. I think some of our guys show up in big time games. They've had to show up in big time games. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that linebacker group plays. And if you've been watching any of my videos, you know how I feel about this Texas linebacker group. And so I'm very interested to see how they play this week. I also think it's going to be important to see the secondary because we're going to be going against a quarterback that isn't very good. I don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but whoever they play, they're not as experienced as some other quarterbacks that we're going to see. So I'm very interested to see how the secondary looks because honestly, the secondary looked really good against Colorado State, but it was obviously Colorado State. So I'm very interested to see how this secondary is going to look. Now, having said all that, you're probably waiting for my big prediction. You're probably wondering how I'm going to get my prediction, what I'm going to say, when I'm going to fill. Here's the thing. I think Texas wins this game. And I think Texas should win this game by like 7 to 10 points. And the reason why I say 7 to 10 points is because there's a couple of things I'm just not sure about. I mentioned them. And also, we're going to Michigan. I always like to account for the weather. Also, we're traveling to the East Coast, time zone difference and things like that. I think an advantage for us in the Alabama game was that it was at night. I think that really worked to our favor. And so I'm very curious to see how we show up for this 11 a.m. game. Although I will say we usually play Oklahoma every year at 11 a.m. So it's not like a whatever. But I'm just curious to see how we travel. Second game of the year. Didn't really leave it all out there against Colorado State. We had our backups coming in. I think the commentator even said like our depth looks just as good as our starters. And so I think Texas is primed to win this game. So I'm saying 7 to 10. I know that's like kind of lofty, but that's what I think. I think it's going to come down to like a last minute interception. I think overall we are just like Michigan was last year. Like if you look at us and how we're shaped up, and the way that we lost last year and different things like that, and then look at Michigan's history, we're very similar to how they were a year ago. And I'm looking forward to seeing this game. And I think Texas is supposed to win. We're ranked, I think, number 3 in the nation. We're supposed to go in there. We're supposed to take care of business. And if we don't go in there and take care of business, I'm going to be curious to see what happens good, bad, or indifferent, or what are some things that maybe I didn't think about heading into this game. The other thing I just want to mention with these videos, I am not touching on every single thing that I think can happen in this game. I am really focused on 3 things that I think will be important for this game. There are going to be so many other factors that happen in this game. There's going to be so many other things that happen in this game. There's going to be coaching things. There's going to be adjustments, quarterback play. All of the different things are going to show up in this game. But this video is more about how I feel, about my opinion, about what I know about Texas, how I feel Texas is showing up, and quite frankly, how I feel like Coach Sark has built Texas to be. I think the other thing, I just want to throw this out there because I always do this. I'm like, only 3 things. But I really feel like Texas also has an advantage with coaching because our coaches are the same coaches that we had last year. We haven't had a lot of change. We have the same coaches. We have stability. We just have a lot of things going for us that I think should be the reason why we win this game. If we lose this game, we'll talk about that later. But I think Texas should win this game. If I was a voting person, like that should tell you everything you need to know about where my brain is at. If I was a person that placed my money on games, I would 100% take Texas. I don't know what the spread is today. I know it started at 6. I heard it was up to 7. I don't really know where it's at, but I would definitely take Texas. And I always say, and I said this in my video before, good teams cover spreads. So if we're a good team, we're going to cover the spreads. And if we think we're going to be able to compete in the SEC, we think we're going to be in national championship title contention or whatever, this is the game we have to go out and show it. So I'm taking Texas. I'm rolling with my team. And you know what? It just kind of is what it is at this point. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about any of this, or let me know if you're just excited to see this game because it should be a very good matchup on a weekend where there's not really very good college matchups. But here we are, as always. HookEm.
I want to throw out there about this Texas and Michigan matchup is this. pay attention to what happens to the team that loses and how they move or who goes up and down or what it means when they lose. Because I think one of the things that we can kind of see how the committee or how people see the SEC, Big Ten, and the matchups and the importance of these games is to see who slides and how much they slide when they beat each other. So, for example, if Texas beats Michigan, I'm curious to see, does Texas move up in the polls at all, or do they stay? Or if Michigan beats Texas, where does Michigan go in the polls? How far do they move up, or what does that look like? Because I think sometimes we can see what the committee is thinking, and we can actually see how the committee feels versus how they start moving people early. For example, did you see how they moved Oregon? They saw Oregon's performance, and they saw they didn't do well, so they moved them back, but they didn't move them too far back. So the second that they need to move them back up, they still can move them back up. So just something to think about as we're watching some of these top teams compete. Pay attention to see where they start to rank them after they lose and win, because I think it will tell you everything you need to know about the end of the season on how much they value these wins and losses. The thing I want to say is I'm a firm, I cannot talk. I am a firm believer in losing early. I think if you're going to lose in college football, the time to lose is early, because when you lose early, you have enough time to change people's minds, and that recency bias of a loss doesn't show up as much. So pay attention to who wins this Texas-Michigan game, to see what happens, to see how people move forward, and to see what it really means. Does it shake things up? Does nothing really happen? And to see how it kind of plays out throughout the season, because again, I think that's going to tell you everything you need to know about the committee. I'm just paying attention to all these little nuances, because in a roundabout way, they always tell us what they're thinking. We just have to pay attention and actually see what they say.